Hello, everybody. Today we're going to get started with some bubble lettering practice. These are the materials you'll need. You should have your Pathways Handbook, one sheet of printer paper that you're going to turn into an ink guard, one colored pencil, and then these inking tools, an eraser that should be available in your supply trays. First thing you want to do is take your sheet of printer paper and fold it in half lengthwise like this. On the front side, you can write ink guard, and what we're going to use this for is, well, it's going to be an ink guard that we place behind the pages that we draw on, particularly when we start to use ink, so that it doesn't bleed onto the next pages. What we're putting together today is an exercise that's eventually going to look something like this. We're going to practice some easy versions of bubble lettering, some shapes that we can form using some fairly natural techniques. So to begin with, get your folded ink guard behind this open page. And on the top side, go ahead, write bubble lettering practice. There's going to be 3 different versions that we're going to try out. The first is going to be based on your natural handwriting. So write the number 1, natural handwriting. Skip some space. Write the number 2. This one is going to be basic bubbles. Then finally, number 3. These letters we're going to practice are going to be basic straight lettering. Let's see what it looks like to try out this natural handwriting. Go ahead and get your colored pencil. I chose the green. You could have chosen whichever color that works best for you. And go ahead and write out your name. I'll write out my full name. After you write it once, go over it and write it a few more times. And what'll naturally happen is you're not going to hit the exact same lines in the exact same spot. And the distance between each stroke you put down should form a bit of an area, a shape that we can kind of color in here. So we're thickening out each individual stroke, but because we're using our natural handwriting, it should have some interesting and natural kind of shapes to it. Once you've written out your name a few times, you should be ready to go back in there, and we're going to outline just the outermost lines of what we see here with a thin onyx pen. So choose a point to start at, slowly go around, and without going inside of the colored portions, you're going to darken in the outermost border lines of what you've written out. Sometimes, like you see over here, some of the letters might have kind of fused together. Just let them be together at that point. You can use these dashed lines like you see there to make them seem like they're only partially fused. The nice thing about this technique is it'll give you some nice, interesting angles at some of the endpoints or the finishing portions of some of the strokes because you're relying on the natural motion of your own handwriting, something you've practiced many, many times at this point. What you can also add over here are some slight dots on the kind of left sides and undersides of these individual strokes. These little dash marks here and there will help to add just a little bit of dimension, making it look like these things have some texture, have a little bit of form to them. They don't have to be everywhere. If you concentrate them on the left portions of each stroke you made, it's an effective way to add a little bit of interest, a little bit of dimension to these. We're focusing them on the left sides and the undersides of each of these strokes. So that's technique number 1. We can move on to technique number 2. For the basic bubbles, we start with a pencil. Let's go ahead and write out a vocabulary word related to graffiti and graffiti art, and that's the word subvert. To start with, go ahead and write subvert with a little bit more space between the letters than you might be used to giving. You can write in all caps like you see me doing there. Once you have the kind of bones of this, what you can imagine is each of these lines, you can imagine them as like balloon animals before having been blown up. So imagine you're blowing into the side of this balloon and it's going to inflate all around that line. You'll probably notice that you're getting pretty close to the next letter. Instead of trying to make the next letter really skinny, just draw it behind the letter next to it. So we're introducing some subtle overlap within the same word. Just go around, imagining that you're inflating each of these individual lines. And don't forget the insides of letters like the B or the R. So there's the beginnings of this basic bubble lettering. Once you're happy with the initial sketch here, then you can start to ink things in. We can go back in with the Onyx pen and trace out the outermost layer, or this outermost boundary that you sketched in last. We're not going to ink in the pencil lines in the middle. Those are just our starting points, our construction lines. At this point, we can clean things up a little bit with our eraser. We don't need the lines inside of the letters anymore. So go ahead and erase those. Please excuse the camera shaking so much. At this point, we can start to add in some really effective details here, starting with a cast shadow for each of these letters. You can imagine a light source coming in at this direction, diagonally from the top left. At this same angle, you can start to draw these dashed lines at the edges of these individual letters. And then those edges can be used to create a connect the dots situation where you're recreating these edges adjacent to them. So this is the direction of the light. You can sketch in some of those little dashed lines and then recreate the edges right next to them and kind of connect the dots between those edges. After you've mapped these out, you can use either the ultrafine Sharpie or the fine Sharpie to ink and fill them in. Usually a combination of both is good. These dark, bold shadows works really well. Right over here in this area, where that cast shadow is supposed to be tapering into the rest of the letter, that's a good place for the thinner Sharpie to come back in. So anywhere where there's a tight spot, that's where the smaller, more precise tool can help you out. But all the rest of the areas, you can use the broader tool with the fine point Sharpie. If you're familiar enough with how to draw out these types of shadows, you can actually go in there just with the Sharpie itself. The main thing to keep in mind here with these cast shadows is the direction of the light. Keep that in mind, because if the light is hitting, say, this portion of the S, you know that you shouldn't be seeing a cast shadow there. Instead, that just remains as just a single edge, and all the sides of the letters that are on the other side of the light, on the opposite, in the opposite direction of where the light's hitting, that's where all the darkness is happening or being cast. Remember, as you're using these Sharpies, make sure to cap them up tightly whenever they're not in use. You might notice that I do that every time I put them down. Otherwise, even a fresh Sharpie gets really quickly dried out and unusable. So, shadows on the right and bottom sides of each letter, one of the most effective types of embellishing details you can add. You can also add some textures like you're about to see me do here. If these are in fact bubbles, you can kind of add some small little circles or ovals, some long kind of U shapes like this, maybe some dashes or tiny bubbles to make it look like there's a kind of chromy shininess to these letters we've drawn. They don't have to go everywhere. And if you, again, concentrate them on the left portions and the bottom portions of each stroke, that's what usually looks best to give things a sense of three-dimensionality, a little bit of form. You might notice that I am moving my pen fairly quickly. That's to prevent my pen from making like really thick, deep lines. I want these strokes to come down with a kind of variation. Like as you move quicker, the line weight that you're putting down with your pen will be thinner. And that's kind of what we're banking on here with this technique. Some quick strokes to detail that out. If you've gotten this far, really great work. Next time we're going to get to this third style of lettering is the basic straight lettering, which is then going to lead us to the more advanced version of straight lettering. Okay, so thank you for watching. Thank you for your hard work. I'll see you all in class.